from Genesis, there is what you can call always a sacred land. Always a sacred space amongst all other spaces. Don't forget that. A sacred land, a sacred space amongst all other spaces. The Bible opens up with Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 to 3. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 to 3. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Next verse. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Next verse. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now, that same word, breath, the Spirit of God, the breath is the word ruach in the Hebrew. Ruach, R-U-A-C-H. Ruach. Now, in Genesis chapter 2, you now begin to talk about the garden. Genesis 2:10. Please pay attention. Genesis 2:10. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden. And from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. The word garden is the word Ganan in the Hebrew. G-A-N-N-A-N. Ganan. It simply means a sacred area. A sacred area. So a Ganan is where you segregate an area for something you want to use it for. So which means that the Bible opens up with a sacred place, a sacred land. And what is sacred about that land is that God dwells there. A sacred place, a sacred land. And what is sacred about the land and the place is that God dwells there. Now it is called Eden. Eden means luxury, pleasure, delight, beautiful, precious. That's the meaning of Eden. Luxury, pleasure, delight, beautiful, precious. And what is peculiar? Now, is it possible for this Eden to be literal? Yes. Now, it is not literal because literally God's dwelling place will be a garden. It's literal because yet again it shows a figure of speech. It is literal because yet again it shows a figure of speech. So within the Bible you will always have this sacred place where God dwells from the Garden of Eden. Look at Genesis chapter 2 verse 8. Please pay attention. Genesis chapter 2 verse 8. And the Lord God parted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Now, what was in the garden? The tree of life. How do we know that the tree of life was in the garden? Genesis 3:23. Pay attention. Genesis 3:23. Therefore, the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So when man was driven from the garden, what was in the garden? Verse 24 of Genesis 3. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So the tree of life was in Eden. not the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life only was in Eden. Don't miss that detail. The tree of life only was in Eden. Now in Genesis chapter 4, where you find Cain, Cain is banished. Genesis 4:14. Pay attention. Genesis 4:14. Cain said, behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. You have driven me out from the face of the earth. You are not thinking. I like you to think. You have driven me out from the face of the earth. But Cain is still in the earth. Cain is still in the earth. But Cain is saying, you have driven me out from the face of the earth. So what does he mean by the face of the earth? Look at verse 16 of that Genesis chapter 4. Pay attention. And Cain went out. You have driven me out. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. So Cain went out from where? The presence of the Lord. So the word earth and the word land are from the same Hebrew word ertis, E-R-T-S. The word earth and the word land are from the same Hebrew word ertis. So Cain was banished from which earth? The sacred earth. He was banished from the sacred land. He was driven out from the presence of the Lord, the sacred land, the sacred earth is the word ertis. So when he said in verse 14, you have driven me from the face of the earth, or from the face of the land, that land will be the Garden of Eden. So Garden of Eden is a figure of speech.